Welcome. This is Bleacher Blums, a sports podcast for baseball fans. Now here's Dave Tuttle and the Astros master of banter, Blummer.
Here we go. Bleachers are open. Good times ahead for those of you tuning in. And what I mean by tuning in is that our social Nostra network is going off. We are well over 10,000 subscribers. And apparently due to our viewers out there, we are getting 3,500 viewers on our YouTube channel of the show. So my gosh, quick golf clap to those at home who are tuning in and putting us on the big screen, because I know it's much more enhanced that way. But we are grateful to be on the Social Nostra Network on YouTube. Remember, you can go to bleacherblums.com and find us on YouTube, or you can find our podcast, which is everywhere, including iTunes and Spotify, iHeartRadio, and everything's going pretty consistent. We're greatly appreciative of that. And the bleachers are starting to fill back up. We've got more information about baseball. I am back from vacation, as you can see, back in my my self-confidence room, I guess we'll call it today, where I can boost myself a little bit. But Tuttle, man, it is good to see you. How have you been over the last week? Is everything good in the Tuttle household?
Everything is good. I appreciate you asking. And it's nice to have you back in Houston there, safe and sound. I'm a little, I don't know, I guess apprehensive is the word. I kept thinking we were coming out of this thing, and I think, as most of the listeners know, I'm not a big news guy, and I don't get up every day and read the newspaper and follow, I'm not a big news guy, and I don't like to be smart. And I kind of react to things as I see them. And, I just see the hospitalizations, or I hear about that going up, and, they talk about, Houston especially, sorry, Houston, that they might have opened up too soon. They've just shut down all the beaches in California pretty much. So LA,
man, for July 4th weekend too. I heard
know.
Laguna.
But the reason they did it is actually smart. It's not because they don't want to have fireworks. It's because we've all been cooped up. And, if they say, okay, let's keep social. I mean, if they open up the beaches, guess what? They're opening up themselves for liability, which we've continually talked about. Liability for professional sports organizations, liability for companies, liability for all of these folks. Well, guess what? If Laguna Beach opens up the beach and all these crazy people have nowhere else to go, no bars, no restaurants, no, the neighbors are still social distancing, guess where everyone's going to go? To the beach, and they'll be on top of each other. So, so I'm, it's kind of a weird, I don't know, most things in life, this too, you work hard at something, you set a goal, and you're like, all right, you just kind of work your way there. And, eventually you achieve that goal, or you reach the destination and there's some resolution. I kind of felt like maybe a month, to 6 weeks ago, we were kind of heading towards a resolution. We were having these, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And I think we're we've regressed a little bit, or we've slammed on the brakes. So I guess personally, the family's great, but it's a little unusual still. The surrealism, or if that's even a word, the surreal aspect is just, it's just kind of hovering. Yeah, no, it's surreal. I feel like masks are, it's just, we live in a mask world. Everybody in downtown Houston or Harris County down here, it is mandatory mask. Out here in Fort Bend County where I live, I just wear a mask. I have 2 masks in my car. I have one waiting on the entry table that I put my keys on. It's just a mask thing. And I don't want to be part of the problem. I want to be part of the, solution with so many things that are going on these days. So it's a little bit better to be proactive. This is going to be a great podcast for us. It gives us a chance to vent a little bit about the COVID issue. It gives us a chance to vent about Major League Baseball. And speaking of, St. Arnold brings you what's on tap, and what we've got on tap is a very special episode of Bleacher Blumps, because I'm going to bring in Brian McTaggart for us to interview and talk a little bit about Astros roster issues, what to expect this season. Tuttle has some questions about the COVID-19 crisis and baseball. We're going to Brian McTaggart is a native Houstonian. We're going to get into some of the Houston and West Coast issues that are out there. So that'll be a lot of fun. And then we are going to finish this podcast off after we get done talking to Brian McTaggart here real quick, is that we're going to have What'll Tuttle Say and a little bit of Bleacher Blums. But there's one thing I want to start this podcast off before I get to Brian McTaggart is it is Wednesday.
It is July 1st, so happy July. But
today, I have that written down.
What's that?
I have it written down.
You know where we're going to.
Yeah. Apple doesn't have it as a predicted holiday, but it's there. Yeah, I know where you're going. Go for it.
Today is Bobby Bonilla Day.
That's
he
right.
Gets $1.19 million until the year 2035, I believe. And I'm not sure. He finished playing in 1999, I think. But I'm not sure how he did this, but it was absolutely just pure genius. 2035 at 1999, I don't know if I could have predicted I'd be alive in 2035, but somebody's going to get that 1.19. And today, just like every day until 2035, he will get $1.19 million. He hasn't been furloughed. He hasn't been released. He hasn't been in the MLB agreement. He gets the cash.
It's so great to think about Bobby Bonilla Day. There's a couple things. First of all, I'm going to start using that as the marker for our podcast. So I think over November, December, we were like, hey, we've been doing this podcast for a year.
Yeah.
I mean, this is our second Bobby Bonilla Day. Like, hey, the Bleacher Blums podcast has been around for 2 Bobby Bonilla days. So
it's a great way of looking at it. That's a measure of time.
Yeah, so next year, hopefully we're going to make it to happy Bobby Bonilla Day for year 3. But yeah, I mean, I think I said this when we talked about it last time on Bobby Bonilla Day, which was exactly 12 months ago, that I don't know if he could even foreseen the genius, his agent or the negotiated contract. I don't think it's something where he was like, oh, this is the greatest contract that's ever been done. But I asked you, I believe, that I thought more agents and definitely more players should think about money deferment. I read a really interesting article about these Stanford graduates, and I should remember the name of the company. I don't know if you saw it, where they're pooling money, basically creating hedge funds or like a money market fund for baseball players. Oh, wow. So they find guys that with decent signing bonuses, and they pool their money. It's like a little investment fund. And if 2 guys make it and 4 guys don't, I think they cap it at like 6 to 8 guys, depending on your risk. Then everybody shares the money as it grows and accrues. But basically, when you have access to this money, put it in a fund. I'm like, only Stanford guys could think of that. I'll share the article with you. I didn't finish reading it. I read it last night, and I meant to bring that up. But it's very appropriate around this
good for them for thinking of that. That's
this
great.
Momentous occasion of Bobby Bonilla Day. Mm-hmm. But the deferred money, I mean, we want immediate gratification, but we continue to talk about how baseball players have this small window of earning, and they get, pretty large sums of money, which always freaks the GP out, the general public. But honestly, if you could pool your money or take a share and put it towards your kid's college fund, or, things that smart people have done, it takes a lot of worry away. And I think Bobby Bonilla has probably lived a fairly charmed life. And every year on July 1st, it's just another reminder of what a charmed life he's living. I have a question about Bobby Bo. I'm wondering if he still talks to Barry Bonds. I mean, Barry Bonds was kind of an ornery guy. They were a formidable pair there in Pittsburgh for a couple of years. I wonder if they're buddies.
You know what? That's a good question. I'm not sure that if you even know this, or if too many people know this, but Bobby Bonilla still is active in baseball. He works for the Players Association. I'm not sure exactly. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what his title is or what his role is, but knowing the people that I do within the Players Association, when I do see them around the ballpark, I will occasionally see Bobby Bonilla floating around and get a chance to talk to him. But I would imagine being a part of the union, even though Barry had his issues with the Players Association, which is a whole nother podcast, still talks. I would imagine he still talks to him because it feels like Barry is even trying to work back into the good graces of everybody in baseball for obvious reasons, the Hall of Fame. Yeah. But, Bobby Bo is good people, man. And I don't know how he was to his teammates, but the guy he's been to me and the way I've seen him interact with other people, he's a good dude, man.
Yeah, I heard he's a really personable guy, and I wasn't asking. I was just more asking as a Giants fan, I guess, because they they went their separate ways. But I think you might have mentioned it last year. Now that it rings a memory or rings a bell that you said Bobby Bo's still around the game, and it's funny because I thought he would just be golfing every single day, but maybe he does a lot of that too.
I'm sure he does. And getting back to baseball a little bit after we, celebrate Bobby Bonilla Day, we are going to bring in Brian McTaggart, the beat writer for MLB.com, and more often on Astros.com is where you see some of his work. So we're going to bring in Brian real quick and talk to him about some Major League Baseball and some Astros. And here we are in the bleachers. We have an extra body in here, if you haven't noticed already. It is Brian McTaggart. Now, a little bit about Brian McTaggart, because we are good friends. We're also coworkers because he writes for MLB.com. But he is a Houston native, grew up watching the Astros. Now he gets to cover the Astros. And I get on him all the time about this because I only got to spend 3 years playing for the San Diego Padres, which was in my hometown. But you have been able to live your entire life, keep your family here, and watch your kids grow up while covering one of your favorite teams. Just give me an idea real quick, and I know I ask you this all the time. What has it meant to you to be in Houston and cover the Astros like you have for a sport you love and a city you love?
Yeah, I'm very lucky in this business, in journalism and especially in sports. I mean, it's a nomadic business. You have to go to where the jobs are, and I have friends work all over the country, and I've lived in the area my whole life. I mean, I worked at the Houston Post, the Houston Chronicle. I went to the University of Houston. I mean, I haven't had to venture out. I mean, I've been very fortunate. Yeah, and to cover the Astros. I mean, they're a team that I started going to games in the late '70s with my dad, '77, '78. And, in 2004, I got a chance to start covering the Astros on a daily basis. And, I've been very fortunate. And, hopefully I can tough it out for 10, 15 more years and have my whole career in one city. So it's unusual, but yeah, I've been very lucky.
Yeah, and so have the Astro fans, being able to follow you on Astros.com with all the great articles that you do write. And I want to just go ahead and dig into this 2020 season because we have gotten some updates and some confirmation on some of the rules and some of the regulations and logistics that are going to be happening around the league. But at first, I just want to get a real quick glimpse of that 60-man roster that we have. We know that it is going to be early on. It's going to be a 30-man roster that's able to play. And then after a couple of weeks, they're going to cut it down to 28, a couple more weeks down to 26. But the Astros and every other major league team are going to have the 40-man roster with them and a 20-person taxi squad. We know about the mainstays on that 25 to 30-man roster, but are there any surprises that are on that 60-man summer camp roster that we're talking about that kind of stuck out to you a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I was very curious about Forrest Whitley. I thought he probably would be on there, but it's obviously he's a guy that needs to take a step forward in some form or fashion. And when I talked to James Click, when the roster came out, he said, we put this roster together. These 60 guys are here, or 50, however many, 55 guys, 56 guys are here to help us win. But I also think for Whitley, it's going to be a developmental benefit for him to be around, a structured camp and sort of iron out whatever he needs to iron out, because I think the clock is ticking a little bit, and he seems like he's constantly tinkering with his mechanics. So the fact he was on there, I was not surprised, but certainly I'll be interested to see his development. And they have this hard-throwing kid that throws 100. It's going to be the closer of the future, and I can't pronounce his name. Hansi or something like that, but he's going to be in the group that works out at the University of Houston, and I'm very anxious to see this guy. I mean, last year he had his first year in domestic baseball and just piled up the strikeouts at a crazy rate. So he's a guy that I think could be their closer of the future, and a guy not a lot of people know about, but he's moving up he's an older guy too. He's like 24, so it's not like you're going to see him at the top of the prospect charts, but those are a couple of names that stuck out to me. But those guys are going to be working out at U of H, and we're not really going to get a chance to see them.
Yeah, I know it's going to be unique, especially for us. Or you're bouncing back and forth in between UH and Minute Maid Park, where these summer camps are being held for the Houston Astros. And I agree with you in the Forrest Whitley sense that there's a guy who has obviously the talent, has had the prospect status, labeled to him, but we really haven't seen that development. And one of the interesting things is hopefully being around after summer camp is over and these guys start to travel and you're able to be around some of these veteran guys and be around Brent Strom a little bit more. It's going to have an effect on some of these young arms. And it also helps having guys like Greinke in the rotation and being around guys like Justin Verlander. And I want to hit on a couple guys that were injured when spring training was stopped because of the COVID-19 crisis. And Justin Verlander was a guy who missed a start with a lat issue and then eventually had groin surgery. Give me an update on him, and then I'm going to ask you about Yordan Alvarez also. So first, Justin Verlander.
Yeah, he had the surgery in mid-March, so he was supposed to be out, I think, 8 weeks. So obviously we've flown by that. He posted a video, I think it was last week on Instagram, of throwing off the mound.
That's how we cover guys now, right?
I know, right? Yeah, haven't had a chance to talk to him yet, but I mean, he looks like to me that he should be ready to go. Especially we have another few weeks before the season starts. So that's going to be a silver lining, I think, to have him not only ready and healthy to pitch, but also you can kind of run them out there. And same with Zach Greinke, too. Two guys who threw a lot of innings last year. Now you can run them out there in the regular season. And we know Dusty likes to ride his pitchers a little bit, too. So you can let them, once they get built up, go 6, 7, 8 innings if they want. And but I certainly think that Verlander is going to be healthy and ready. I mean, I haven't heard anything that there's been any setbacks, and he was posting videos of throwing off the mound, so that's a good sign.
Yeah, it is a good sign. The one guy I haven't been able to get any information on is Yordan Alvarez, and I'm hoping that your sources within were able to dig a little bit and answer some questions, because I was concerned about a guy his age having knee injuries or knee issues this early in his career. But with these couple months off, hopefully he's become a little bit stronger. Have you heard anything about Yordan?
No, I haven't really. Sorry, my sources didn't come through on that. I mean,
we've been under the radar.
We haven't had a whole lot of conversations with Dusty Baker. But I'm with you. A 22-year-old guy with knee problems is not ideal. But he also showed up at spring training after having a few months off as well. So maybe this extra 3 months will do the trick for him. I think he only got maybe into 3 or 4 games before they shut it down in spring training. But that was definitely a concern, I think, right when camp ended, where his knees were becoming a bigger and bigger concern. So that's going to be one of the big storylines when camp opens is what's he able to do out there.
All right, that's the Astros. I want to talk a little bit more broadly about Major League Baseball and some of the rules, and bring in my co-host David Tuttle, because my first question is something that I'm even trying to figure out with some of the information that I'm reading with the articles that are on MLB.com. But it seems like a fluid situation with the opt-out clause because of the COVID situation and guys who are at high risk as far as health is concerned. As far as we can, up to date to this moment, what are the options for players? Because there have been 4 guys that have opted out of playing in the 2020 season. How does that affect them as far as pay and service time? And how is it up to the clubs, or is it a Major League Baseball rule?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of different ways you can look at that. If players are at high risk and they opt out, they get their full salary, they get service time, and so that's not an issue. And I guess high risk has to do with heart disease, lung disease, blood pressure, diabetes, things like that. I mean, I know this is a respiratory illness, but it's also had a negative effect on people with other ailments. Now, they can also opt out if they have a high-risk family member or someone in their inner circle that is high risk. But then it's up to the teams to make a decision whether they receive salary or service time at that point. So, Ian Desmond laid out a case of why he opted out, because of some of the people in his circle were high risk, and there were other reasons as well. But I got to think that if a player has someone in his family who's high risk, or someone the family's caring for is high risk, that I might be dumb saying this, but I got to think the team would take care of them financially if they choose to opt out. But if they're deemed high risk and they opt out, yeah, absolutely, they get service time and pay.
Yeah, Brian, thanks for sharing that, and thanks for joining us today. I would agree with you, and I think that the benefit of having having the medical professionals involved in this. Jeff and I have been saying this consistently, though. One of the challenges has been, they've been doing this kind of collective bargaining agreement version of negotiating to get back on the field. And I feel like some of these issues are what they should have been discussing, way back when we were getting closer to getting on the field. And that leads me to say, what is the risk here, and should the sport be moving forward as quickly as it is to get on the field, even though it feels like an eternity for us, meaning with some of those risks? So we have these 4 players that opted out, and they may be high risk, but we do know that, some cities like Houston, especially, that opened up before others, are seeing hospitalizations and those things, increase. So what are your thoughts on actually getting back on the field anyway?
Yeah, I think it's very risky, and they've certainly laid out the detailed protocol in the manual they set out. I mean, there's it's going to be a lot of hoops the players are going to have to jump through. Anybody on the staff to even get in the ballpark, and then the travel is a whole different story. And we're going to have players test positive. I mean, I think it's only you have that many people traveling. You know however many players are, hundreds and hundreds, plus the extra players that are traveling now on the taxi squad, the 3-4 extra players they can carry, the staff. Someone's going to test positive, and you just got to wonder how negatively that's going to affect other players. Or other players going to decide to opt out at that point, or coaches going to opt out. The Astros have an older coaching staff, an older manager with Dusty Baker. So those things have to be taken into consideration as well. But I think if they can pull it off, I wouldn't say I'd be surprised, but I'd be impressed, because they have a lot of hurdles to clear, I think, even before they get this thing off the ground. And they're not in the bubble like the NBA. And so, you have to go, if you go on the road, you have to stay in your room and things like that. Mm-hmm. But I mean, that's going to be hard to police that with every player staying in his room when, there's a restaurant across the street they like, or whatever the case. So it's going to be a real challenge, I think, to keep everybody absolutely healthy.
Yeah, I agree. And, a lot of the talk has been about money. It's been about rules. It's been about logistics. And I think the underlying, what we're all kind of agreeing on, is that there is a great deal of risk that the players are going through. So hopefully they do adhere to these rules and regulations, and they can keep it as healthy as they possibly can. And that being said, to what Brian is saying is, the media's access to these players is going to be very limited. I'm hearing tier 1, 2, 3. There's going to be varying levels of access to these guys. And I know for myself, working in the booth, we are going to cover games at Minute Maid Park from the booth at Minute Maid Park. And when the team travels on the road, tentatively right now, we're going to be calling games from the studios at AT&T Sportsnet SW. And it's very selfish of me just to think of myself, because Tags, your job is to cover this team on a day-to-day basis. But are you going to you're usually traveling, you're usually in the clubhouse, you're usually having access to these guys, because you need the interviews to fill a lot of your content. Give everybody an idea of how you're going to handle this. Can you travel? Are you going to be allowed anywhere near these guys? How are you going to handle all that?
Yeah, you mentioned the tiers. There's going to be tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. The players are tier 1, and the coaches and the field staff. Tier 2, I believe, is sort of like media relations, other people who have to deal with the players. And then the media is tier 3. So tier 3 will not have any contact with tier 1. So
we'll be back 2, over here.
Yeah. Pretty much. I mean, we're going to be limited to the press box, and that's it. No clubhouse, no field access. Everything will be in the press box, assigned seating, social distancing, and all our interviews will be done via Zoom. So for that reason, I am not traveling, just because it can be done from home. So
not at all.
Not at all, unless things change, or I don't know what will happen in the playoffs.
That's crazy to think about.
Yeah, and also, I mean, when we cover, as a beat writer, when you cover a team on the road, that is your most beneficial time, because you have more time in the clubhouse. There are fewer reporters there, so that's when you really get to know the players, get to talk to the players more, because it's really hard at home, because they're in and out of the clubhouse quicker, they get on the field quicker. There's 3-4 times as many reporters. So generally the home clubhouses have more places the players can hide than the road clubhouses. So yeah, missing that road clubhouse time is going to be difficult. So, I think I'll be like you guys, when they're on the road, I'll be, doing some Zoom interviews and watching the game. But I was telling somebody today, just you watch it, you go to the game, and between innings, so much stuff could happen. There could be an injury, there could be a position player switch. The manager could go out to talk to the umpire about something. So many things that you see with your naked eye, even between innings, you can't see on the broadcast till later. And you're not going to get that when you're not at the ballpark. So
I'm with you on that 100%. That's going to be the hardest part, is all of the ins and outs and the little idiosyncrasies that are in between that actually help us tell the story.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, and that's the experience that you have and you bring to the table, the logistics, and they're really kind of cutting you off at the legs by saying, hey, look, you can't travel. I mean, rightfully so. We're in a crisis, but it's going to be a challenge. And as you said, if you can't travel, I agree, just being a former ball player, thinking about the road hotel, right? I go down to the lobby, I get a cup of coffee, I might be reading the newspaper. If you're hanging out down there having a cup of coffee, you can have a couple, conversation, either off the record or on the record, but you get some insight that you wouldn't gather sitting at home, like you said, doing the Zoom call. And I think that's going to, we're all going to be challenged. I'm going to ask a question that's kind of based on what I said before, because Blummer and I consistently talk about other sports, right? So you have the NFL that's still kind of dominating everything. And then the NBA, we talked about staying in their hotel room and being quarantined. The NHL and MLS even figured some of the stuff out prior to MLB. But ultimately, Major League Baseball is still kind of, America's pastime, but still trying to be there at the forefront. And I'm wondering, again, just in general for American sports, with the way the pandemic is going and how we've all become more technologically savvy, and how it's going to challenge you in your job. What do you foresee baseball? I'm asking you to look in a crystal ball. Like, will baseball end up gaining some popularity if they're able to pull this off? Are they going to be able to kind of regenerate or reinvigorate what's going on? Or is this just business as usual? We're going to sit where we sit on the hierarchy and we're just going to try and, finish out the season.
Well, hopefully they'll gain some, because I know a lot of the comments I see on Twitter, especially during the negotiations the last few weeks, a lot of fans are like, that's it, I'm done with baseball. But we've heard this before. The fans, they always come back.
Of course.
I mean, I know attendance has been down the last few years, but I think the fans are going to come back, and people are so desperate to watch anything right now. I mean, I've been watching cornhole. It was a live competition. I was into it, but I think when the game comes back, people are going to tune in. The games that start at 9:00, people are staying up later, and they're going to be all in and eager to watch those. So, yeah, I think at the end of the day, when football starts, football is going to be the king. I mean, that's just sort of the way it's turned in the last 10, 15 years. But I think there is a really good appetite for baseball, and I think people can't wait to see it again.
I would hope that you're right, and I kind of agree with you. I find myself watching a lot of soccer right now, which I was never into before. And even Blummer mentioned he watched NASCAR. He said he was watching it for the commentary and see how they were doing it. But I don't.
You want to call some NASCAR races, Blummer?
I was curious. Hey, man, the way things are going and the way this season was going, I was like, man, I need to start broadening my horizons, man. Look at all these left turns these guys are making.
Right.
It's incredible. And then and Blummer has a question kind of related to this, but I wanted to kind of see how the season will shake out. Like, I've seen both sides of this, right? There's going to be a lot of parity because we have a shortened season, and then there's going to be no parity at all because we can turn our rotation over, and we can ride kind of the big players and the big payrolls into success. Do you have thoughts around that? Like, what are we going to see? The cream rise to the top, or are we going to see a little more parity here? And one of my favorite tweets that I saw was the San Diego Padres are in first place with 60 games to go. So I mean, there's a lot of that going on.
I think there will be a lot of parity. I think some teams are going to be in contention from day one. It may change the way they do things. Maybe they put their foot on the gas. They have the August 31st trade deadline now, so you're going to have to decide pretty quickly whether you're in it or not. I mean, look, last year we all know the Nationals got off to that terrible start, would have missed the playoffs in the 60-game season, and they won it. Texas Rangers would have made the playoffs last year after 60 games. So,
think about that.
Yeah, so I think that's going to change the way some of these bubble teams sort of handle things, and maybe they put the foot on the gas a little bit and say, look, let's just really go for it here. And I think in the AL West, there's a couple of those. I think the Rangers could be a team that is going to be in contention just with some of the additions they made on the pitching staff. Angels. I mean, look, Rendon, Ohtani's back. They're going to be a dangerous team. That's the thing. I mean, you get hot for a month, you're in this all the way to the end. Last year, Seattle started 13-2, and I think after 44, 45 games, they were still at 500. So, so I mean, how would they approach the last few weeks of the season if they're in it? Are they going to make trades instead of getting rid of guys? So I think pretty much every team except maybe Baltimore and Detroit, Padres maybe, but heck, they might even be in it in that tough West division. Who knows? But yeah, I think everybody's going to be in it. I think it's going to be cool.
Great.
Yeah, the shortened season is going to be cool. There's rule changes, the universal DH, and the extra innings with the runner at second base. Those are going to be different to get used to. But I want to ask you one last question, or a couple of questions. I don't want to say one last because that's always like a media guy's nightmare is to say that and then have a follow-up. But I'm going to have a couple more questions for you, Tags. What statistical oddity are you looking forward to? And I mean, is somebody going to win the ERA title with a 0.5 ERA? Is somebody going to hit 400? Is there going to be a guy that hits 25 home runs in 60 games? What are you looking to anything as far as a shortened season?
I was thinking yesterday, I was watching on TV and they were making some predictions about who's going to lead the home run race. And I think they were coming up with somewhere around 19, 20 home runs. If someone gets to 20 home runs, I think that would be impressive. But what if someone does hit 400? I mean, how would history look back on that? I mean, it would be to hit 400 over 60 games is nothing to sneeze at, of course. Yeah, but there's going to be a but after it. But it was only 60 games. So Jose Altuve has hit, I think he said over 460 game stretch a couple of times in his career. And,
wow.
And he's a guy that you talk about health, getting rested up back to where he needs to be. I mean, I think, and for other reasons, I think he's going to come out with a lot to prove this year. And boy, it'd be fun if they makes a run at it, wouldn't it?
No, absolutely. And that's one of the guys I'm actually expecting to go out there and be on a tear, because we have seen moments where he has gone on tears for months at a time, hitting it well over 400, especially if you take some of the road situations he's been in. But Tags, I want to thank you for your time. But before we go, there's a couple of things that, people need to know about. We know you love beer. So do you have a favorite St. Arnold beer that you like drinking?
St. Arnold. Let's see. Is there Pressure's on. It's the Lawnmower.
Yes, my man. The Lawnmower is a very good summer beer. And a lot of people, what the most frustrating thing for me, knowing that you're not going to travel and I'm not going to travel, and the bar situation is, when is the next time we get a chance? People don't know that you are a huge karaoke singer and you do a phenomenal George Strait. Your first song back from a karaoke hiatus is going to be what?
Boy, that's a good one. Are you going to be there?
You better damn well believe it, man. I better be there.
Hey, I'll Zoom. We'll Zoom into it. I'm in.
Well, I'll probably have to go with the greatest country song ever recorded by George Strait, which is Amarillo by Morning. You can't go wrong with that one. So that'd be a good way to kick it back off, wouldn't it?
That is outstanding. I would greatly look forward to that, and I would be in the front row with my lighter up, singing with you, boy. One last question before we go, because you've got a couple of West Coast guys, and then we have you, the native Texan Houstonian. In-N-Out or Whataburger?
Whataburger.
Come on, man.
By far. What do you say, David? In-N-Out?
Oh, I'm In-N-Out. Yeah. So, but that's, I think Jeff knew that was a loaded question. And even if you liked In-N-Out, Brian, you got no shot. You got to go Whataburger just to defend your home territory on this.
Yeah, I mean, they've opened some In-N-Outs here, and they opened one in Dallas a couple of years ago, and I felt like they were invading our territory. I'm like, what are you doing?
Oh no!
I think they have some in Houston now, don't they? So.
Oh, how about this? So we moved out here 3 years ago, and literally last year, in 2019, they built one about 15 minutes from the house. So, I mean, it couldn't have worked out perfect. And you know what it's great for? And I know you're going to hate this, is it works for my recruiting of Californians to come out here and hang out with me. And I know that probably drives you and other Estonians nuts.
No more. We're full, Blummer.
We're capped off. There's a housing cap on the market here in Houston, and nobody else. Tags, you are the best. I appreciate you. I can't wait to see you, because it sounds like you're going to be on the same level as I am as far as the press level. We'll be able to see you, right?
Yeah, just from afar. I'll have a mask and I'll wave and.
Yeah, we'll mask up, do everything right, but it'll be great to see you. I'm glad to hear that the family's doing well and you're doing well. And thank you very, very much for coming on and giving Bleacher Blums some legitimacy.
All right, guys. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's fun.
Great stuff from Brian McTaggart, a knowledgeable human, but it's kind of funny to be able to talk to, myself, TK, Julia, Brian McTaggart, some of the other beat writers and some of the other people we know around baseball. And there's still so much uncertainty around the game. We all have high hopes for it, but I thought the COVID issue was really interesting. And some of the opting outs that we're starting to see, there may be more of those, but it was great stuff from Brian McTaggart. And if you want to follow him, he's at Brian McTaggart on Twitter. And of course, he is always going to be writing those articles on Astros.com. And that was your first introduction to him. What did you think of Brian?
Yeah, I thought Brian was fantastic. I mean, obviously, I didn't get to chime in on a few points. One was you were talking about Jordan's knees, and he's 22 years old. I think that's the old LeBron theory, is Jordan 22? Not Brian, not Brian's place to say or your place to say, but those knees might be older than 22. And honestly, if I was a conspiracy theorist in the world, I might think that the Astros had something to do with this current crisis we're in.
Because you did it. No
because because Justin Verlander had an 8-week recovery time. He's going to be back healthy. Greinke threw over 200 innings last year. He's going to come back healthy. Altuve had to have some work done, and
Lance McCullers is coming back.
Yeah, he's a little creaky. Lance McCullers gets another 3 months, and we are going to forget a little bit about the garbage can, the trash can stuff. I mean, seriously, I obviously got a laugh out of you with the conspiracy theory, but the Astros are shaping up for a 60-game season to have kind of all their ducks in a row and all the horses ready to go, just like most teams will from a health perspective. So I expect a great race. And like you said about Brian, I mean, growing up in Houston, living in Houston, being able to kind of work in the town that you grew up in and raise your kids there is probably a special treat. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19, I'll be curious to see, and he did touch on this, what kind of insight. I mean, he does have the connections, he does have the experience, but it'll be interesting to see what kind of insight he'll be able to provide, because at tier 3, I mean, I feel like I have tier 3 access to the players.
Here's tier
based
1.
on what he said.
Here's tier 2. Here's tier 3.
There you go. Yeah, that's right. I mean, and in all honesty, like I said, I feel like I have tier 3 access, and I'm
You're
not
in perfect shape for it.
Yeah, I'm not a Major League Baseball beat writer. So, no. And I love that you're laughing. I just think it's going to be a challenge. I mean, everybody's been challenged by COVID-19. He hasn't been furloughed. He still has a job. He still has to write his articles, and he's still going to follow the team. But, it's going to be a challenge to kind of see what the landscape brings and how he's able to share what he knows and provide some insight into the Astros team that so many of the listeners follow.
Yeah, and now that we've had him on, we can always bug him and try and get him back on maybe in the middle of the season, 30 games in, and see what his feelings and emotions are about the game, and maybe retouch that what Tuttle was talking about as far as how is he handling, writing these articles, not being able to get near these guys and get those questions. But as big as those challenges are, one thing that is not a challenge, especially for me and being on this podcast, is that I've got a co-host that is not going to be furloughed, because you can't get furloughed from something you don't get paid for. So here we are with What'll Tuttle Say.
Yeah, what'll Tuttle say today is I'm back to my customer service stuff, but it's going to be an interactive what'll Tuttle say, Blummer. So be ready. So I heard this from someone else talking about, I don't know if it's an age thing. Yes, please be ready. About when you see people at the grocery store now, especially wearing masks, so they're a little more incognito.
And you better not be talking about Trader Joe's.
Trader Joe's is there too. You got, I saw that too. But Trader Joe's, Albertsons, Whole Foods, it doesn't matter. When you go to put your groceries into the car and you're watching someone, because you're either sitting in your car on the phone and they look around and you look around and they put the cart like right in between your car and their car, and they get in their car and drive away. So the question really is, this is the interactive. So it's like, dude, and again, I'm going to be a little judgy here. Not often the youngest, fittest people that kind of look around and go, you know what? That little cart stall over there, it's 8 feet away. That's a little too far for my little legs to carry me. I'm just going to leave the cart here. And that leads to when you pull into the spot, you're like, ooh, there's an open spot kind of up front, and you turn in and there's 2 carts in there. And you're like, come on, people.
Son of a.
So the question is really, do you say something? And I'm getting better at not saying things, but I'll roll down my window every once in a while. And, some days I'm feeling good. I'm like, hey, the cart stall's right there. I'm going to have trouble opening my car door. And then other days I'm like, I look at them, go, really? Like, are you really going to leave the cart right there? I'm turning into the Trader Joe's lady already. So we already know we already know that I'm a crotchety, grumpy old man, but man, the grocery cart thing is a frustrating thing, but I think it's a microcosm of what we see with people in society. And I'm curious to know, first of all, if that obviously bothers you, but are you the kind of person that just shakes your head and carries it with you? Or on occasion, will you reach out and say something to people in a locker room, sarcastic kind of, I always try and have a nice tone, right? Oh, yeah, hey, that's a really nice place to leave the cart.
Wow, you did a great job of parking that cart 3 feet away from where it's supposed to go.
That's right, exactly. So I'm sure you have some thoughts.
Yeah, you know what? I can't remember the last time I actually caught somebody in the act, but it's always funny to me because, they put the two wheels up on the little curb that is right there instead of taking it, 15 feet across and giving it to the cart attendant that's literally standing right there. That's probably the most frustrating thing, is that I know that somebody is literally getting paid to take care of the carts, and you can't just meet the person halfway. But I've not verbally, I'm more the passive aggressive guy where I'll try and show you up somehow.
Well, I know how you do that, which is what I do. I'll bring my cart out, load my groceries, and then you see somebody like leave their cart right there, and I go over and get their cart and I stick it in my cart and I walk it. Yeah, that's the best way to be passive aggressive.
Yeah, I've done the part where like, oh, hey man, let me just get that for you.
Yeah.
And I'll take it and go put it over, and you see him go, and I'm like, no, that's good. I got it, dude. I'll take care of you, man. I know this is highly, tough to get it all the way over here. Yeah. You might miss, I don't know.
Yeah.
But, it's a little more, it's funny. It's a little more understandable here in Houston because it can get to the point where your feet are boiling or you're sweating too much, you're pitting out. You don't want that. But still, the way that a lot of the situations in parking lots that I've seen here in Houston is those things are literally in every single row. Oh, I mean, it's not that hard to put it back there, but luckily those people have not found their way into my line of fire, so to speak, for lack of a better.
There are many other folks in your line of fire, but just not the group. And again, I mean, I'm sure we'll get some comments on in our mailbag, but we can extrapolate that into other areas of life. That's the reason I get frustrated, right? So it's not just about the grocery cart. It's like, what are you willing to do to make your life convenient, others inconvenient, mm-hmm. or what are you willing to do to help people? Like
it's habits. It's creating the habit. Are you the person that like actually thinks about saying, no, I'm not going to take it the extra 10 feet? Or are you the person that's like, I'm just going to get it done. I'm going to do it right. And hopefully it turns into a habit in other aspects of my life. That's where I hope that that trend or that habit continues, is where you say, you know what, this is, again, I don't know. I mean, is following rules cool these days or not? I mean, is that a rule that you're like, screw it, it doesn't apply to me? Or I don't know, but it just, the common decency, I think, is more of the rule than the actual rule of putting it in there. Right. The expectation of not having that person pull in and go, son of a bitch, I wanted to park there, but that cart's there.
Discipline equals freedom. We've heard that somewhere before.
Yeah.
I'm going to be disciplined about doing this, and guess what? I don't have a guilty conscience, and I live a better life. I wanted to show my little NorCal shirt representing the Giants here on this Houston Heavy podcast, but I will give a shout out to them at the end of here. What'll Tuttle say here is they are also doing the cardboard cutouts that I kept referencing that the Bundesliga is doing.
Yeah,
San Francisco,
Oakland A's
go
jumped in on
figure.
this too.
It's got to be the Bay Area. Yeah, the Bay Area is the most liberal place in the country. Anyway, season ticket holders, I believe, get a free poster initially.
Oh, nice.
And then if you don't own season tickets, but you want to have your face on the cardboard cutouts in the stadium, then you can just pay. I can't remember what it was, somewhere between $25 and $500, something like that. So
yeah, there was a wide range. I'm not sure how maybe it's closer the more shots you get on camera, but it's like Oakland was 50 to 150. Now my question is, for you being a Giants fan, mm-hmm. and maybe other teams do this around the league, let's say you are the San Francisco Giants and you're selling these, and you get a request for a cardboard cutout, and I want to put my Dodgers hat on or my Dodgers jersey on. How do you feel about that? Can I do that?
Well, so me personally, it's a free country, baby. Money talks. Like if you want
the Dodgers called them up and said, I want 15,000 cardboard cutouts with Dodger uniforms.
Yeah. So again, so that would be a challenge. I mean, it's a great point. I think the reason they limited it to season ticket holders,
I think is a great idea.
Which is a great idea, is just to avoid exactly that. I mean, I don't think they just went at this willy-nilly. I mean, I believe, if you want to fill the stadium, I guess, with Dodger cutouts, then, you're paying for that, the San Francisco Giants payroll. Like, who gets the last lap?
Their money is as green as anybody's.
That's right. But to your point, I mean, I don't think they're going to be able to oust the season ticket holders, especially since the season ticket holders are free. If you've been a season ticket holder for more than, 5 years or something like that, they're going to make a cutout of you or for you. So I think it's a really nice gesture for one,
but
it's also,
but it's,
it's kind of what we all try to do with our gyms, like our CrossFit gyms that are independently owned. I think a lot of people try to prepay their membership for 3 to 6 months so that they could keep the coaches and keep the programming, and just, you're going to get it docked every month. So if the season ticket holders don't want their money back and there's going to be a 60-game season, they've already spent the, $500 to, whatever it is, $2,500, $25 to $2,500, excuse me, for their season tickets. Why not give them a cardboard cutout in the stands?
Yeah, no, I like it. And it'll be a lot of fun for us, actually, I think, as broadcasters, to have some of those cutaway shots, or, directors are going to have a blast with, after a guy hits home run, they're going to zoom in on a cardboard cutout of somebody. Yeah, exactly. Somebody's set up like that cheering. So it will open itself up for a little more commentary, I would imagine, too.
Well, and I think that it would be really cool to be able to kind of send a picture of yourself, like each game. Like each game's a little bit different. Like, take a selfie, send it in, or maybe you can have all the emotions. Then we're getting a little crazy, right?
No, that's good. We should patent this. You heard it here first on Bleacher Blums. Put up monitors. Put up little monitors. And then we can Zoom watch the game from our homes. But if you're one of the unlucky bastards with their screen down the left field line that gets tanked by a foul ball and your screen goes out, tough break, man.
You got to buy a new screen,
or buy a new monitor out there.
Some guy buys the big monitor and sits right in front of you, which is what happens at the game. Like, hey, can you down in front of your big monitor? The big monitor's blocked by the little monitor. Hey, my kid's trying to watch the game. Sit down. Like, that's exactly right. You start buying monitors. Some guy's buying a 60-inch flat screen and put it right in front.
Dude, that would be outstanding. Oh my gosh, that's funny. Oh, you got me crying a little bit. That was good.
Off the rails. That was what I'll say. All right, so Blum's Blast is coming up, right?
And here I got to be somber about this too. Even though you finished strongly, I'm gonna finish mine a little bit with a question for you. But Blum's Blast is going to be a little bit tempered, because I think there's an underlying theme, and especially after the conversation we had with Brian McTaggart. And if you've been listening or watching this podcast, you understand that, yes, we are excited about baseball. But at the same time, I think one of the things that is starting to pop up with the increase in positive cases, the increase in hospitalizations and things like that, and some of the statistics that are literally coming out about COVID-19 have kind of tempered that a little bit, because I think about baseball and I think the game is great, love it, want to watch it, want to work for it, want everybody else to enjoy it. But at the same time, what is that risk? And now players I think we're understanding that players are the ones taking the most risk. I think in the NBA, in the bubble they're in, hearing some of the comments from Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, I thought it was very interesting that he said that we've set up this bubble. We're going to put players in it. We're going to expect them to adhere to the rules, but I'm going to leave every once in a while if I have to or if I want to. And I just don't see that as being fair. And that's what really kind of sparked the idea of the players are making this choice. And you can talk all you want about the money that they're making or the perks of the job or what this means towards their career or their legacy. But these guys are still people and still, human beings that qualify into that. What do we have? 300 million people in this country or whatever it is. They still qualify as being a United States citizen or wherever they are in the world. So they're still people. They're just exceptional at playing baseball, and the expectation on them for taking that risk and going and playing for a paycheck, no matter how big it is still going to be a risk. And that's where I am kind of tempered in the idea of being excited about this, because I know at a moment's notice, this COVID-19 could pull the plug on what could be a great season or an interesting season or a fun season. So the Ryan Zimmermans and the Ian Desmonds who make these pleas and explained why they're opting out of the season. It's kind of interesting to me that Ian Desmond had to write such an eloquent, perfectly worded statement to say why he's not playing. It should be an understanding that if somebody does opt out, we understand why, and there shouldn't be a question why they're opting out. But the thing that I would miss the most and the thing I'm looking forward to the most this season is getting back on air and reconnecting with fans across, the platform that I've been able to have. This podcast has been great. The game has brought me so much, but the part I'm really looking forward to is hanging out with my boy TK and hanging out with Julia and talking some baseball. So hopefully that happens, but I just want everybody to understand why these players are opting out, investigate, research, understand, a little bit more. And then if and when this season starts, we'll be super excited about it. But until then, I'm going to temper it a little bit. So that's just a little bit of the Blums blast. I think you feel a little bit the same way because we talked about it off camera, I guess, or off the podcast. What about the players? Am I crazy in thinking that, or do you feel the same way about trying to understand why these players might opt out, even though the money is so good or not as good as they had hoped?
It's a great question. And I think what I try to do, I guess, as I've already judged the grocery store folks today, is not to be as judgmental about certain things, specifically related to things that you don't understand or circumstances that aren't related to you. Meaning, in our neighborhood, we have 10 homes in the cul-de-sac. We have 2 families that we haven't seen for the entire COVID-19 crisis.
Wow.
Like every once in a while, you see their little kids like peek out of the, like, oh, what's going on out there? Whereas, my kids are out walking the dog. My kids are riding, skateboards in the cul-de-sac. The neighbor kids are out. And so I'm trying not to be judgmental. I mean, everybody has a different risk factor, whether it's, if somebody said your kid's an asthmatic, they're high risk, or grandma lives with them and she's high risk. I mean, that's a personal decision. And I think that's where we definitely agree. That personal decision shouldn't be judged. It doesn't matter how much money you're making. I mean, if somebody told you that your kids were in danger, what would you do? You'd remove them from harm's way. It doesn't matter if it's this invisible killer. And I think maybe we make light of it sometimes on this podcast because we're talking about tempering, common sense and science with like the cabin fever and the actual urge to be social and see people. And, those two things can kind of exist in different planes. But when those planes start to cross or there's no way to separate them, then what do you do? What's the decision you make? And everybody's going to make a different decision. And I think I brought this up last podcast, but I was listening to another podcast with a gentleman who wrote a book about the Spanish flu in 1918. Mm-hmm. But he quoted somebody else. So this just goes on and on. But he quoted a guy saying, the only thing we learn from history is that we learn nothing from history. And I think that, to me, that just means right now we have we really have no idea. We don't know when the next pandemic's coming. We don't know how we're going to venture out of this. And until that happens, I'm certainly not going to be judgmental and assume that I know what the right thing to do is for not only myself, but certainly for other people, regardless of whether they're leaving $1 million on the table or not.
Yep. And that's the tough call that baseball has to make right now. It does feel a little bit at sometimes like they're forcing the issue, but they're trying to do it for the greater good of the game and understanding that people out there want to watch live sports. Tuttle has talked about it. I've talked about it. Brian McTaggart talked about it. We want to see live sports. We need that adrenaline rush. We need that distraction, and hopefully baseball is able to bring it. Now, this weekend is going to be July 4th, and I'm going to end Bleacher Blums with this question because it's one of the things that happens on July 4th that absolutely grosses me out every single time I see it. The hot dog eating contest.
Yeah.
Good God. I don't know if you've ever sat down and actually watched one of these things, but dude, Joey Chestnut apparently is going to do this thing via Zoom or something, or somehow virtually have a hot dog eating contest. I'm not going to watch because it's hard enough that, the one time I did watch it, it was friggin' gross, man. The dip in the hot dog, and a hot dog, whatever. Are you going to, have you watched it? Are you a hot dog eating contest aficionado watcher?
I'm not. It's funny. McTaggart brought up the fact that he's been watching cornhole because it's a live event. I mean, yeah. I have not stooped to the level of watching cornhole or watching a hot dog eating contest. It's not maybe as egregious as you're saying in terms of not liking hot dogs and watching them dip it in water. It's just to me, it's not really a sport. It's kind of gross, and I don't know. I've passed the days of wanting to eat like that. I think when my brother and I used to go to McDonald's when I was a kid, and you have a brother that's close in age, it was like my mom would, all right, order what you want. I'm like, all right, I want 2 Big Macs, quarter pounder, large fry. And then my brother would be like, I want 2 Big Macs, quarter pounder, cheeseburger. I'm like, all right, I want another cheeseburger. We were trying to eat as much as we could.
Each other, yeah.
Yeah, turned into a contest.
My brother and I would do that with the Little Caesars square pizzas.
Oh.
Remember those things?
Yeah,
We'd each eat one ourselves. We just sit there staring at each other like, why do we do that?
Yeah, that's right. And you leave a crust and then he doesn't leave a crust. So you're like, you pick up the crust. You're like, I don't know. That's got to be a young man's thing. But yeah, eating contests. Hey, hello.
Hey, girl. Why are you apologizing? You just enhanced our podcast, babe.
That's right. And we'll have Kevin keep that in.
Yes.
So to your point, I mean, it's not something I'm going to be watching. And I thought you were going to bring up fireworks again. We've talked pretty extensively about fireworks on here.
I'm going to get the biggest box I can today. Trust me. Well,
Houston, Texas, have at it. Here, you got to like sneak it into the state and then hope it even goes off, I guess. But we have all the
some to you. Do you think they'd actually get that across the borders?
I don't know. It's not really that important to me because I don't want to upset my neighbors. I guess I'll let them upset me.
All right. Hey, babe, you got anything for us as long as you're here? We're about to finish the podcast. We're just closing things up.
Ask Corey if she's going to watch the hot dog eating contest.
Are you into the hot dog eating contest?
No, that's disgusting.
It's July 4th, and Joey Chestnut's going to go for another championship virtually. How are you not concerned about this? What?
Don't hear it.
Louder.
Where they dip it in the water.
Come here.
Yes, they dip it in the water.
What's going on that? You can
She's right here. I hope you can hear.
Yeah, we can hear.
Hold on.
Oh.
What, babe?
It's gross how they dip the hot dog in water.
Nobody likes dipping their hot dogs. It's not good.
It's disgusting.
It's gross.
Thanks for making a cameo.
And honestly, eating 2 or 3 hot dogs can't be as gross as eating like 40 hot dogs or whatever you eat. It's like I don't think I've eaten 40 hot dogs in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I was going to say in a lifetime.
He's going to eat 40 hot dogs in about 5 minutes. I mean, come on. I don't know.
That's not good.
It's gross. So.
All right. I think we're going to finish this thing up, dude. We've finished in a ball of flames right here.
We've gone off the rails, folks. That's all right.
Go ahead and lock this thing up, man.
Well, I was just going to tell you. So we do have a couple of Bleacher Blums mailbag questions. I think we're up to like 3 or 4 or 5 questions. So maybe we'll address those next time. So folks, if you do have a sincere question, I know one of them was, hey, can we get an autograph? And I was like, that's probably not a legitimate mailbag question. Somebody wants us to send an autograph to them. But there are some actual real good questions in there covering, I don't know, somebody mentioned, and I'll just tease it for next time. Somebody asked about the way soccer works with players on loan. And they specifically brought up Forrest Whitley. And I thought it might be a question for McTaggart, but we didn't have time. Where, a guy that hasn't made it to the big leagues but needs some seasoning, if the Astros would keep its rights, but then let him, another team wanted him to be their 5th starter or something. Yeah, like players on loan. So anyway, it was an interesting question. We'll get into that next time in the mailbag. I wanted to let everybody out there. I got a lot of questions from Blummer and some other friends of mine that are into fitness. Did I do Memorial Day Murph on Memorial Day? I did not because of COVID. So we're doing it on the 4th of July. I will let you know how that goes next time. 20-pound weighted vest.
What?
Mile run, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 air squats, another mile run. It's going to take me at least an hour. And
that's
we're going
impressive.
we're going to, it's taking one for the country, right? And we're going to do our best to, at least, I don't know. It's not a mimic, but it's to show our appreciation for the folks that have sacrificed and given so much for this country, especially on Independence Day. So Memorial Day Murph got moved to 4th of July, and so I'll be doing that on Saturday morning, and I'm looking forward to it. But again, that leads us to obviously the shout out to our first responders, healthcare workers, military, all those folks out there. We greatly appreciate you, and we will show our appreciation as much as we can. We voice our appreciation on here, and I will be thinking about you on Saturday when I do the crazy workout. Body armor.
You're going beast mode, man. I'll be cheering for you. Take a little bit of video so we can fire it up there too. Everything sounds partially doable, but the 100 pull-ups, man, trying to pull this corpse up and down 100 times is not going to happen. I would be, if you narrowed it down. This corpse, yeah, this is what it's turning into. Is just, was it Tales from the Crypt? Remember that skeleton that would pop up? Yeah, yeah, that's how mine feels after about 10 pull-ups. But get it done. Get after it like we always say. We do appreciate everybody out there on the front lines, and of course all the healthcare workers that are going through this this huge bump in the COVID crisis. Hang in there. Stay tough. We appreciate you. We appreciate everybody listening. Again, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, most podcast platforms, and of course you can go to bleacherblums.com, or you can find us on YouTube at the Social Nostra Network. And that is going to do it for this episode 77, I believe.
Yeah,
77.
77, I think so.
Rolling sevens, and we're done. So I want you to remember two things: get after it, but most of all, believe it.
And keep your masks handy.
Yes.